Hi there. Welcome to Productivi-Tree. I'm Santi Tacoronte, and I'm here to help you succeed and be happier. In each episode, we'll explore new ways to work smarter, manage your time better, and grow as a person. We'll share fresh ideas, find ways to improve, and help you become your best self at work, in life. Join me as we learn and grow together on Productivi-Tree. I have assessed over 500 executives on their productivity, and the top 10 all have something in common. They score high across 4 specific vectors: efficiency, effectiveness, ownership, and well-being. When these 4 align, you just don't lead better. You create compounding advantages that separate exceptional leaders from good ones. Take my 5-minute free assessment, and you will see exactly how you compare. Most leaders are shocked by what they discover. Find out where you stand at the link below. Nootropics have been called the future of human performance. They have been also called expensive placebo. Today, we stop guessing and we go straight to someone who has spent years so you don't have to. David Tomen is the founder of NootropicsExpert.com and author of Head First, the complete guide to healing and optimizing your brain with nootropics supplements. He is recognized for translating complex neuroscience and supplement research into clear, practical guidance for people dealing with brain fog, anxiety, focus issues, and cognitive decline. Through his articles, videos, and in-depth reference work, David has helped thousands of readers and viewers understand how specific compounds affect mood, memory, attention, and overall brain health. In this episode, he opens up his playbook so you can make more informed, responsible decisions about what you put in your brain and why it matters for you and how it works. Disclaimer: this episode is provided for informational and educational purposes only and does not constitute medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. No listener should act on the basis of the content of this episode without seeking appropriate medical advice from a licensed healthcare professional. David Tomen, welcome to Productivi-Tree.
Thank you for inviting me.
David, let's start with the very basics. What are nootropics? I hear it everywhere. I go online and I see nootropics everywhere, but I'm not sure what are they.
That nootropics being all over the place is probably my fault. Nootropics are cognitive enhancers. They're natural cognitive enhancers. They're natural dietary supplements that can affect the human brain. Now, the word nootropic is interesting where that came from. There was a guy named Dr. Cornelius Gurgeu who was working in a lab in St. Petersburg with Dr. Pavlov back in the early 1960s. And they were trying to figure out a way to quash motion sickness. And I think they were doing it for the cosmonaut program. So they were monkeying around with GABA, and they came up with a derivative of GABA called piracetam. And it turned out piracetam did not help with motion sickness, but it boosted cognition in healthy young people. And that kind of surprised them, Dr. Gurgeu and Dr. Pavlov. Pavlov from Pavlov's dogs, if you remember that story. Anyway, fast forward a few years later in 1970, so word got out that this had happened. It was just a cyclic derivative of GABA that we naturally produce in our gut. So it was a synthetic, but it came from a natural substance that we create in our microbiome. And word got out worldwide that this drug that these guys invented from GABA worked really, really well to boost cognition. So other companies started jumping on board and creating their own versions of it. So they came up with things like aniracetam and then oxiracetam and then phenylpiracetam. And Dr. Gurgeu saw what was going on, and he decided that he wanted to name this class of drugs. So in 1970, piracetam was invented in 1962. Dr. Gurgeu came up with the word nootropics in 1973. He's originally from Romania. And he got nootropics from Greek, new, the mind, and Tomen, so to bend the mind. And then he came up with a list of 6 items, 6 bullet points that a substance had to be classified as a nootropic. And they included things like it had to be able to help the human, boost the human cognition in the human brain. It had to help with memory. It could not be toxic, that kind of thing. I haven't got the list handy. It's on my website. But so that there's a very strict definition of what a nootropic can be, and that means nootropics can only be natural substances. So that means that things like Adderall and Ritalin and Vivance and modafinil that journalists typically label as nootropics are not. They're smart drugs. Okay, if you have to have a prescription to get the substance, it's a smart drug, even if it affects the human brain. If you can get it at the vitamin shop or Whole Foods or your local health food store, you don't need a prescription for it, and it helps the human brain, it's a nootropic.
So why do you think the word nootropic has become so confusing? Do you think people confuse them with smart drugs and prescription drugs and they fear them? And also a follow-up, David, that's one. The second, so nootropics are derived from natural elements, from plants?
Or the human body. Like there's amino acids like L-tyrosine that is an amino acid that's naturally produced in our body. We get it from food, and that helps make dopamine. That's considered a nootropic. Resveratrol, which is considered a longevity supplement, it boosts SIRT1, which means that it extends the caps on the ends of telomeres, so it helps with longevity. Alpha-lipoic acid is a natural antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, and we do get it from different kinds of food, but we do produce it in our body as well. It's considered a nootropic. We don't get that from a plant. We get L-tyrosine from beef and other forms of red meat. Resveratrol comes from a plant. So it depends. We've got natural amino acids. We've got natural peptides. We've got natural antioxidant, different substances that come from various parts of different plants, including extracts from plants themselves, like ashwagandha. These are all considered nootropics. And why it got messed around by some journalists just took license with the idea that if it can help the human brain, we heard that nootropics help the human brain, so if something helps the human brain, it must be a nootropic. They just got their definitions mixed up.
Can you take us back when you first discovered nootropics and what was happening in your life back then and why you fell in love with the topic and the science behind it?
I kind of out of desperation. I've always had a problem with focus and concentration all of my adult life. I have traveled to 45 countries. I've lived in a half a dozen of those, and wherever I ended up, I usually ended up in an executive position with some big company. An example is I ended up working for Cable and Wireless in the Caribbean. I lived in Antigua for 9 years. I was the group sales and marketing manager for the Eastern Caribbean from Trinidad all the way up to Jamaica. And I wanted my boss's job. He was the chief marketing officer. And I worked at it and I worked at it and I worked at it. And every year, he would set me down and say, David, you're a great manager. You're a good executive. People love working with you. You're a fantastic salesperson, but you've got to learn how to focus. And so I went, and that happened the next year and the following year. So I went out and I bought the books on how to focus, and I bought the books on how to be a better executive, but I could not get it. I thought it was a moral failing. I thought it was the way I grew up or something, and I didn't know. And so anyway, I left the islands and I ended up in South Florida, and I met this gorgeous blonde girl on North Miami Beach 20 years ago. God, it was 20 years ago. And we fell in love. And within 6 months, we got married. And I'm still married to this beautiful woman. Her name is Lara. And Lara saw what was going on the first year that we were together. And I was working as a yacht broker at that stage in Fort Lauderdale. And so she saw what was the struggles that I was having, and she introduced me to a rock star psychiatrist in Palm Beach, Florida, that took me into his office, and within 10 minutes, he diagnosed me PTSD and ADD. And not ADHD, but ADD, because I don't know, there's no hyperactivity. Now, the PTSD, I'm not sure where that came from, and that has been taken care of since then. I think I know where it came from, but for adult ADD, he prescribed Ritalin or methylphenidate. And I remember the first day I took Ritalin, it was like somebody turned the lights on in my brain. It was like freaking magic, man. I'm going, wow, this is what Santi is like, this is what ordinary people think like. And for the first time in my adult life, I could focus and I could concentrate, and a direct result in improvements in my business and in my social life and in my family life. But in a couple of years, I started growing tolerant to Ritalin. In other words, Ritalin stopped working as well as it used to. And I panicked. And because I'm thinking, somebody figures out what's wrong with me. They figure out a solution to it and it's going to stop working. I don't think so. I got to figure this thing out. But now there were no books on this back then. There were no websites on this back then. I was reading clinical studies on PubMed to find out how methylphenidate worked, or Ritalin. It's a chemical name for Ritalin. And I discovered that Ritalin was a dopamine reuptake inhibitor. And I had no idea what that was, but I saw the word dopamine. And I thought, maybe if I maybe I don't have enough dopamine. How do I fix that? And I discovered that L-tyrosine was a precursor to the synthesis of dopamine. If you took L-tyrosine as a supplement, you could increase your dopamine levels. While I was researching this, methylphenidate or Ritalin and ADD and ADHD, I discovered that brain cell signaling was also a problem. And brain cell signaling is largely dependent on another excitatory neurotransmitter called acetylcholine. And I thought, well, maybe I don't have enough acetylcholine in my brain. How do I fix that? I found out that there was two supplements. There was CDP choline or citicholine and L-car, acetyl L-carnitine. The combination of those two supplements boosted acetylcholine. So I went to GNC. I got some citicholine, L-car, and L-tyrosine and brought it home, started using it. Ritalin started working again. And so each time I took my Ritalin dose, which was in the morning and at noon, I used these supplements. And then I used L-car and L-tyrosine at 4 o'clock, again, later on in the afternoon, to prevent the Ritalin crash or the stimulant crash. Because one of the problems with these stimulants is when they wear off, you just go, you just like tank, man, you hit a wall. So these supplements stop that crash. Now that was and I was able to reduce my dose from 30 milligrams to 20 milligrams of Ritalin twice a day. I've been using that stack since then. I've never again grown tolerant to Ritalin. I don't crash later on in the afternoon. It just works. Now, I never came across the word nootropic back then. And I didn't know this, but there were supplements that help the human brain. That never dawned on me before. So then fast forward a few years, and my wife sent me and put me in an ambulance and sent me to the ER. She thought I was having a heart attack. And this is several years later. And it turns out it wasn't a heart attack, but for some reason I become severely hypothyroid. In other words, my thyroid just was not putting out thyroid hormone, and I got deathly ill. I mean, really, really, it was so bad. We were broke. My business was upside down. Our marriage was really on the rocks. I was freezing cold. I was falling asleep on the couch at 2:00 every afternoon. I was just a wreck, and I didn't know what the problem was, and that things came to a head and found out it was hypothyroidism. In the hospital, they prescribed Synthroid, which is synthetic T4, and it didn't help. But they kicked me out of the hospital, and I eventually found natural desiccated thyroid, which comes from a cow, and that started working. But during this period, one of the things that happened is I completely lost my memory. Like, I just lost my memory, man, and I went to 2 different neurologists in Miami who tested me for early onset Alzheimer's. And independent of each other, they tested me for Alzheimer's and dementia. I did the test. I came up perfect on it. And they brought me into their office and said, "David, this is not Alzheimer's. This is not dementia. We don't know what's wrong with you. We can't help you." So it was back to reading clinical studies and finding how the human brain created memory, and added a couple of more supplements to my stack. It took about 2.5 years, but I finally got healthy again. I finally got my memory back. And I started copywriting, and I started writing copy for supplement companies, and soon after that, I started Nootropics Expert, and that's the stage where I came across the word nootropic. Nobody else was writing about this stuff. I had fixed my own brain by doing my own research, figuring out what supplements to use, but I had to figure it out on my own.
Hmm.
There was nobody to help me do it.
So, David, what are some of the things you've been in this journey for years? And what are some of the things that you got wrong at the beginning about nootropics?
What did I get wrong? I never did anything wrong really in the nootropics and the use of nootropics. What I got wrong in some cases was my understanding of how they worked. And that took a long time to learn because I was determined if I was going to start writing about this stuff, I needed to know how it, I needed a degree in neuroscience is what I needed, and I didn't have one. So I gave myself a degree in neuroscience by reading clinical studies. Um, One tiny example, and this may not make any sense to your audience at all, but um, we've got mitochondria in every single one of our cells. And our energy supply during our day is produced in those mitochondria. It's a thing called adenosine triphosphate, or ATP for short. And there's a Krebs cycle or the citric acid cycle. There's an electron transport chain that CoQ10 gets a molecule from NADH, puts it into mitochondrial complexes 1 through 3. That goes on through 4, and that goes on to produce oxygen, which goes on to combine with glucose and fatty acids to produce adenosine triphosphate. I didn't get that. I didn't understand that. So if you find any of the stuff that I have not corrected, I missed it from when I was writing back then. I was saying things like our mitochondria. Anyway, I was saying it wrong. Anybody with a neuroscience degree that read my stuff would realize that this guy doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. And it was as I got more knowledge and experience that I went, oh, okay, I didn't get that right. I went back through my book, I went back through my website, and I corrected it. So those are the kinds of things that I got wrong. It was my interpretation of the way this stuff worked. It's pretty fucking complicated, man. It's really complicated. Some of it. Some of it's really simple.
David, you say that nootropics are not hacks, but tools. What do you mean with that?
Well, they're tools. They're called supplements for a reason. We're supplementing because we can't get this stuff from food anymore, because of our industrial food supply. You realize that nootropics are just dietary supplements, but they happen to affect the human brain. 100 years ago, there was no such thing as a dietary supplement industry. Think about it. Today, there's a multi-billion-dollar supplement industry. Why? Is it because people just woke up and have got more interest in being healthier? Or is it that they're sick because from the food that they're eating and they're trying to get better? They're instinctively they're gravitating towards something that can help them because they're not getting it from their meals. And there's clinical study after clinical study after clinical study that backs me up on this. I mean, do you realize that one apple, it would take a bushel of 25 apples today to get the same nutrition that you would get from one apple just 25 years ago? And these nutrients are lost through depleted soil that the plants are growing on. So it's either from the depleted nutrients in the plant because of the depleted soil, or the animal that eats that plant is depleted in nutrition, which is the reason why they supplement cattle as well. Then nutrients are lost during harvest. They're lost during transportation. They're lost during storage. They're lost during processing. They're lost during cooking. By the time that plant gets to your fork, it was already depleted when it was pulled out of the ground. There's hardly anything left when it gets to your fork. And all you got to do is take a look at Western society and how sick people are. I mean, everybody's obese. Young people are dying of cancer. Young men have low testosterone levels. I mean, all this stuff is it's not the way the world should be.
David, our life expectancy is higher than ever. So how do you reconcile these two things? We are sick, but we are living more than any other time.
Because we got some really, really good medicine. I mean, that's essentially it. I mean, it's true that we've got more food available to us than a lot of our ancestors did around the world. That's true, even though it is depleted in nutrients. I think 95%, something like that. I'm not even sure what the latest statistic is. It's somewhere between 50 and 95% of Americans use a supplement. So people just instinctively know that they need to be supplementing with stuff. And then medical science is progressing as fast as technology is progressing. People are figuring things out. I mean, we figured out what figured out what our DNA is and chromosomes and stuff like that. They didn't know that 50 years ago and 100 years ago. We know that mold on bread ultimately produced penicillin. They didn't know that years ago. We're really, really fortunate it's unfortunate we live in such a toxic society, but it's really fortunate that there are people that are smart enough to figure out how to keep us alive in this toxic environment.
David, what are the biggest myths that drive you crazy in this space?
That there's no one pill solution. That's the biggest one. I still get this every day, either on my website or on my YouTube channel or in podcasts. People will say, I've got anxiety or I've got depression and I'm using Lexapro and I want a natural alternative to Lexapro. So they're looking for one nootropic or one supplement that will replace Lexapro. And that's just not the way things work. I mean, there is no one pill solution when it comes to optimizing your brain. Typically, it takes a combination of supplements to fix something. I'll give you one example. Most of us are deficient in omega-3s because we don't eat enough fish. And that's really bad news because our brain is about 60% fat, and most of that fat is DHA. Omega-3s have got DHA and EPA. Our brain is mostly DHA, and that DHA is in brain cell membranes. So you have got billions and billions and billions and billions of brain cells. And every one of those brain cells is enclosed in a membrane. And that membrane is 2 layers, and those 2 layers are made up of DHA, phosphatidylserine, and phosphatidylcholine. To get those cell membranes healthy and permeable, you need those 3 ingredients, phosphatidylserine, phosphatidylcholine, and DHA. If you're deficient in any one of those 3 phospholipids, that cell membrane starts to lose its permeability, which means it gets hard. It's harder for the good stuff like water and oxygen and nutrients to get into the cell, and the garbage and toxins to get back out of the cell. Now, how this manifests in everyday life is short-term. It hurts brain cell signaling. So short-term and working memory is not as good. You can't think on your feet. Your reaction time is slower. Verbal fluidity suffers. When you're reading, you're rereading sentences because you didn't get it the first time. But you can't remember where you left your keys or the remote or your glasses. And if this goes on too long, it can turn into something like anxiety and or depression if you're in midlife, and things like dementia and Alzheimer's and Parkinson's later on in life, just because of these brain cell membranes are not healthy. But there's no one pill that will keep brain cell membranes healthy. It takes 3 different ingredients to keep them healthy. It takes 1,000 milligrams of DHA, 300 milligrams of phosphatidylserine, and then we get phosphatidylcholine from another supplement that I recommend for a totally different reason. But there's no one, there isn't one thing that can heal brain cell membranes. That's just one really good, I think, example.
The next one, it might sound a bit silly, but why don't they put all these components into a single pill?
You mean the pharmaceutical companies? They are. They're trying, at least they're trying to. The majority of the drugs that are on the market right now are derived from some natural ingredient. But there's a constant fight going on because the supplement industry has gotten to be so big and so powerful. There's a constant battle going on between the drug companies and the supplement companies and ordinary people like me. An example is there's one of my favorite supplements is NAC, N-acetyl-L-cysteine. NAC is a precursor to glutathione. It's used in hospitals for treating acetaminophen poisoning in the ER. It's a really, really powerful supplement, NAC, NAC. It is the only supplement that I know of that can help restore dysfunctional dopamine receptors. So in other words, it can be used for Parkinson's. One of the drug companies wanted to make a drug out of it, and they got a hold of the FDA. Drug companies support the FDA, and they wanted to get NAC off the market. So the FDA put out a letter and said you can no longer sell NAC as a supplement. Well, the supplement industry lost its marbles, and everybody started screaming. The supplement companies started screaming, users started screaming, and this is one of the only times that I've ever seen the FDA back off. And once they backed off, they put out another letter saying, oh, we changed our mind. You can still sell NAC as a supplement. Companies started making NAC again and selling it as a supplement. Another one that is banned by the FDA and is still banned by the FDA, but you can still get it from Life Extension, is vinpocetine, which is by far the best way to boost blood flow in your brain that I've ever found. I mean, it's amazing. It's inexpensive. It's an extract of the lesser periwinkle plant. It comes from an ingredient called vincamine. It's a prescription drug in Europe. It's been banned in the United States by the FDA because one of the drug companies want to make a drug out of it. So far, they haven't. But you can still get it from Life Extension.
I see. So, speaking about the different varieties, which compounds consistently show the strongest science for focus, mood, and cognition?
Ooh, that's a loaded question. It's not really a fair question because those are three different questions.
Let's
Um,
break it into three.
Focus is largely focus is associated with concentration, and that's largely dependent on acetylcholine, which is your signaling neurotransmitter. You got two excitatory neurotransmitters that you use mostly during the day, and that's acetylcholine and dopamine. So acetylcholine, you need optimal levels of acetylcholine for things like focus. You need it, and so you need dopamine for things like learning and memory, for libido, for motivation, um, for reaction time, for going into flow, for muscle contraction and movement. But when you kick out your leg or you stick out your tongue or you wiggle your nose, that signal comes from acetylcholine. The muscle contraction itself is dependent on dopamine, but dopamine gets the signal to do its job from acetylcholine. So they work together. So to answer your question, it would be a combination of 2 or 3 different supplements. It would be acetylcholine. No, I'm sorry, not acetylcholine. It would be CDP choline or citicholine, which provides the choline molecule needed to make acetylcholine, and LCAR, acetyl L-carnitine, which LCAR helps make coenzyme A, which is the enzyme needed to make acetylcholine, along with vitamins B1, B2, B3, B5, magnesium, and vitamin D. Those are all cofactors. If you're deficient in vitamin D, you can't make acetylcholine no matter what you're using to make it. For tyrosine, typically for dopamine, it's typically tyrosine. There, you can use L-DOPA, which I don't recommend for a couple of reasons. The dopamine pathway goes like this: phenylalanine to L-tyrosine to L-DOPA to dopamine to norepinephrine to epinephrine, or adrenaline, which is your fight or flight response. So there's 3 ways that you can increase dopamine. You can use phenylalanine, which is fine. You can use L-tyrosine, which is fine. Or you can use L-DOPA, which is not so fine. Because L-DOPA we get it as an extract from Mucuna pruriens, and these extracts are typically only 25 or 30% extracts, so you don't really know how much L-DOPA you're getting. And the other one is and you don't know how much L-DOPA you're getting, and you got to get the dosage exactly right, and it works right away. There's no fooling around. L-DOPA makes dopamine, period, whether you like it or not. L-tyrosine is a little bit more forgiving. It's 2 steps away from making dopamine, but you also need tyrosine to make thyroid hormone. So tyrosine and iodine make thyroid hormone. T4 has got 4 iodine atoms. T3 has got 3 iodine atoms. Selenium converts T4 to T3. T3 is used in every single cell in your body and brain. What was the question?
The combination, you were
Yeah.
talking about the combination
Okay.
of
So a
mood.
combination of tyrosine, citicholine, and LCAR, acetyl L-carnitine, and that'll take care of what you want to do. So long as you're using a good bioactive B complex or a bioactive multivitamin, magnesium, and vitamin D. Those are critically important. And a lot of people are deficient in vitamin D and they're deficient in magnesium.
Speaking about productivity, which is the topic of this podcast, how do nootropics help quantify? I'm looking for a quantifiable answer. Mental clarity and influencing your productivity, both in the field of efficiency and also effectiveness, decisions making.
That's a really good question. It's a really difficult question to answer. I mean, for a person to be productive, they've got to be motivated for one. They've got to have mental clarity for another one. Um, motivation and mental clarity, thinking clearly, cognition has to be clear. Energy, you've got to have the energy to do it, right? So it's a combination of a bunch of things for a person to be productive. You can have incredible mental clarity. Your memory could be spot on. But if you have no energy, you're screwed. You can't be productive. But if you got tons of energy and your brain is not thinking straight, you can't be productive either. Right? So it's kind of like you're juggling several different things to optimize your brain. Again, there's no one pill solution to this. I wish you could take a pill and say, you can take this pill to increase productivity. Well, if somebody says that, they're bullshitting you. They're lying.
How can people know? Let's say someone is curious about nootropics and want to browse your website or buy your book. How can people figure out where to start? I mean,
That's a
and
damn good.
we said
Yeah, that's a good question. 10 years ago, that was a really difficult thing to do. These days, it's simple to do, but you need to go to a trusted source. Um, First of all, you have to stop and look at yourself and what is it that you're trying to fix? And try to be as granular as you can about this. What are you struggling with? Are you struggling with energy? Are you struggling with motivation? Are you struggling with depression? Or are you struggling with anxiety? Or is it OCD? Or is it PTSD? Or, what are you struggling with? And once you settle what you're struggling with, then you can go to a website like Nootropics Expert that I've been writing for the last 10 years, or you can go to my YouTube channel and enter that thing in the search bar and just search for it. And you'll get page after page after page of supplements showing what can be used to help you fix that thing. That's the easiest way to do it. I mean, I do have a book too that you can see over my shoulder. That's got an index in it. It's got a table of comments and a pretty robust index in the back that you can use, but it's going to be quicker if you just search my YouTube channel or search my website. But it's important that you go to the right channel or the right website to make these searches because there's still a lot of crap out there. So you just have to be careful about who you are using as an authority in this thing.
let's do some quick answer questions. I have 5 of them here for you.
Okay.
Number 1, what is the most overrated advice in the biohacking world?
Probably if somebody is really suffering from something, probably that if they talk to the right person or they take the right supplements, that it can be quickly fixed. And that's just not true. I mean, things can be fixed. I mean, it's a miracle to some people the way this stuff works. But it takes time. And sometimes it takes a while to figure out what's wrong if a person is suffering, it takes some time to figure out what's wrong with them in the first place before you can figure out what they can use to get better.
Number 2, one nootropic or habit that you never skip.
There's so many things that I never skip because I'm a creature of habit. I will never not. The only time in my life that I have ever not used my nootropic stack, I use my nootropic stack 4 times a day. Morning, noon, a smaller stack at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and then a small stack for sleep about 90 minutes before bed. The only time in the last 10 years that I have not done that is when I was laying in a hospital bed and I couldn't get to it. If I'm at home or if I'm traveling, whether it's long distance or even locally, I make sure that I have these supplements with me so that I can take them at the point of time, and that I know how to take them. I make sure that I'm using unrefined coconut oil or extra virgin olive oil or something when I take my supplements to make sure that the fat soluble ingredients are absorbed. The water soluble ingredients you don't need to worry about. But if I end up in a hotel room and I don't have any unrefined coconut oil, I'll just grab a chocolate bar or something. That provides the fat that I need to turn on the fat digestive part of my digestive system. But when I go traveling, you can just ask my wife. We've got an extra carry-on that is just filled with my supplements.
Brain optimization aside, what is one lifestyle habit that moves the needle equal or more than supplements for your brain health?
Sleep.
Mm-hmm. Even above food?
Sleep by far. We encode long-term memory during our sleep. You're not gonna have any long-term memory if you don't get any decent sleep. And you have to slide down into REM sleep, so it's gotta be sound sleep to encode memory. But yeah, I mean, do whatever you can to get some sound sleep. Whatever you can.
David, let's wrap this up. What is one safe and practical action a listener can try this week to improve mental clarity as a whole? It doesn't have to be only nootropics, but what's your to-go recipe for mental clarity?
If you're not already doing it, get yourself a good bioactive multivitamin or a bioactive B complex. There have been clinical studies recently that show that every American is deficient in 2 or 3 different nutrients because we're not getting this stuff from our industrial food supply. And so that and it varies from across the country. You know, it depends on what they're eating, it depends on where they're living, it depends on what they're drinking, it depends on their genetics. So different people can be deficient in different things, but really the only way that you can put a stop to this is just get a bioactive multivitamin. I mean, getting a really good bioactive multivitamin like the one that I use, the Performance Lab Multi, is a game changer. It really is. You will feel it.
David, what is the name of your book and where can the audience find it, buy it, and read it?
Head First, the second edition. It is available at all major booksellers around the world. It's a manual for your brain. It's 962 pages. I think it's got 120 of the most popular nootropic supplements detailed in it. It's got a couple of chapters on how to put stacks together for different things like ADHD or depression or anxiety or it's not a book that because it's so big, it weighs almost 3 pounds. When you get the physical book, it's not something that you want to read cover to cover. It's a manual, and you treat it as a manual. When you're looking for something, look up the index, and that'll take you to wherever you need to in the book. Lots and lots and lots of compliments on that book. It needs to be upgraded, and I need a version 3, a 3rd edition. I just haven't had time to do it, and the 3rd edition would be so big, it would probably have to be 2 volumes.
Very good. David, thank you so much for bringing all this knowledge, your passion around nootropics. I'm sure the audience will be curious to read more about it and check all your content about nootropics, different areas where it impact. And we wish you all the best.
Please come to my website, Nootropics Expert, or come to my YouTube channel, Nootropics Expert. We want to see you.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, sir.
I have assessed over 500 executives on their productivity, and the top 10 all have something in common. They score high across 4 specific vectors: efficiency, effectiveness, ownership, and well-being. When these four align, you just don't lead better. You create compounding advantages that separate exceptional leaders from good ones. Take my 5-minute free assessment and you will see exactly how you compare. Most leaders are shocked by what they discover. Find out where you stand at the link below. Thanks for listening to Productivi-Tree. I hope you found something useful in today's episode. If you did, and it helps improve your life even a tiny bit, that'll make me really happy. Remember, you can find Productivi-Tree on all major podcast platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. If you enjoyed the show, why not share it with a friend who might also find it helpful? Until next time, and keep growing and stay productive.